Listen, anyone can do anything they want here. If there's the will to do something, they can do it. Cracking down on Khalistan and trade with India are linked, and I think it's trade with Canada and every other country is sort of linked to the same thing. Because if you have, transnational criminal organizations in your ports and running the logistics in your country, like the Khalistanis run fentanyl and the drugs through the trucking industry, we need to do something about Khalistan, because these lunatic Khalistanis are significantly harming Canada in the social fabric, but there's also a extreme economic cost to this.
Mr. Modi is coming to Canada to attend G7. The new regime extended the invitation to Prime Minister Modi. How do you look at the visit by the Indian Prime Minister? Also, what kind of significance you make out of that?
Well, I think it's pretty significant for Canada because Canadian politics for the last 10 years has been defined by externally, they would say maybe some chaos and some bad actors. Internally, a lot of buffoonery. Trudeau known for dancing around wearing blackface. So Canadians are generally pretty happy to have a prime minister who speaks in full sentences, can count to 10 without his fingers. This is major progress for Canada. On the G7 thing, it's pretty significant because the major sticking point that Canada and India had is the Khalistan movement and the support of, outright terrorism and balkanization in their country. What I saw today, coming to cover the G7 and covering the Khalistan protest, is one of their lines is literally balkanize India, or to separate it. It's quite understandable how any country doesn't want to be balkanized, especially India, who at the rebirth of India, we could say, and partition, millions died. It was truly terrible, real horrific violence. No one wants to separate India again internally, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim. But there's a concerted push outside of India to undermine it, mostly funded by Pakistan, but all the groups that want to destroy India, usually the same ones that want to destroy Israel and destroy America, undermine the concept of a nation state. So you have communists get in there, you'll get Jamaat-e-Islami, the Muslim Brotherhood, Khalistan, CCP, all the bad actors. So Canada's kind of become a hub of all these bad actors because of our highly permissive, what people would call woke or social justice. That was really defining the Trudeau era. So by inviting Modi into Canada, this is a pretty hard shift from our Carney to sort of distance the Liberal brand from these sort of permissive of terrorists, separatists, and all that type of nonsense, and a shift back into sort of, maybe hopefully pre-Trudeau Canada. But there's still a long way to go. This is a good first step to sort of counter radicalization and setting a line against that. But again, it's still a long way to go.
Regarding the aspect where you feel that even Prime Minister Modi is coming to Canada, we have seen the trajectory of the relationship, especially during the Trudeau era, where the separatists, the Khalistanis were much talked about, they had dominance. Do you think in the present regime, the relevance of Khalistanis will tone down?
Yeah, listen, I'd say yes, of course it's going to tone down. Now, this is a good thing. However, the reason I'm so confident is because it was at a very, very, very high level. We were kind of at maximum Khalistani nonsense in Canada with a Liberal closed inner circle cabinet that was very heavily Khalistan, and then propped up by Jagmeet Singh's NDP. Parties in Canada are very much cult to personality of the leader. So when Jagmeet had balance of power being an outright Khalistani, you had sort of a perfect storm or imperfect storm, depending on your perspective, of Khalistan here. So it's definitely taken a note down. Mark Carney specifically did not go to the Khalsa Day parade out in Surrey, where there are floats of Parmar, known as sort of the biggest Khalistani power display in the country is out in Surrey that day. All the other parties went. Pierre flew to be there. Did not manifest in any votes, as I tried to warn the Conservative Party. But it's notable that Carney stayed away from that. Something Justin Trudeau would never stay away from, and that's progress. Do I expect a federal Liberal government to be the most, anti-terror government in the world? No, I would not say that. But we're we have taken big steps specifically on this issue. There's still work to be done because we do have, jihadists on the streets of every major Canadian city every day, every week. They're still, causing chaos and vandalizing synagogues and churches and whatever. So we still have that, but the Khalistani menace seems to be tampered down because Mark Carney, at the end of the day, is some sort of economist. We can debate on his economic literacy. I think has a history of failed economics and supporting bad economic policy with green energy scams and all that. But at the end of the day, he did manage billion-dollar funds, and he can do the math. There's more money in trade with India, a real country with billions of people and a real economy, a real consumer base, than there is with a Pakistani proxy propped up by China who run around and, run drugs through the country. Like, yeah, you can get a couple $1 million in drug money into the party, but I commend Mark Carney for understanding that, 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion, potentially 50 billion is a bigger number than 2 million in drug money. So in terms of the sort of long-term economic output, I think it's wise to want to trade with India because we have everything India needs. We have tons and tons of resources, not a lot of people. And India has tons and tons of people, huge consumer base, and every resource that they're lacking or don't have, we have an abundance here in Canada. So we're both democracies. We're both scions of the British Empire in some way. Maybe we're not, brothers or we're cousins or whatever you want to say it, but we have some sort of shared history there, a base of shared democracy. We have what they want. They have what we want. It's a country. This is the easiest 2 + 2 = 4 in the world, but this is Canada. So we're a country where we give awards to teachers who say 2 + 2 is 5. That's not a joke. That's real. That's this country. So you would think 2 + 2 is 4, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what I believe in. But we are a country where half of the people will sometimes believe 2 + 2 = 5. So it's going to be a bit of work in progress to get Canada and Carney and the Liberal Party to understand, we have resources. They help people and lift people out of poverty, make the world better. People will give you money for those resources. And if we have an economy based on resources instead of human trafficking and money laundering, then we're in a better place. But we have a few steps to get there.
Daniel, very important aspect is always the trade. The numbers are very important for both the sides. There were talks about the FTA back then. But right now, do you think India and Canada will reach up to a position to iron out their differences because the security issue and also taking action against the Khalistanis? Do you believe the present regime can take it?
Listen, anyone can do anything they want here. If there's the will to do something, they can do it. So nothing is impossible it's not impossible to crack down on crime. And the cracking down on Khalistan and trade with India are linked. And I think it's trade with Canada and every other country is sort of linked to the same thing. Because if you have, transnational criminal organizations in your ports and running the logistics in your country, like the Khalistanis run fentanyl and the drugs through the trucking industry, this presents a real problem economically and trade-wise. Because are you a trusted partner? Is Canada a weak link, right? Because if nefarious actors are involved in the logistics of trade, and we're seeing, what Ukraine and Israel are able to do with smuggling and drones, this is a real national security threat. So if Canada wants to be a player on the world stage, we need to do something about Khalistan, because these lunatic Khalistanis are significantly harming Canada in the social fabric, but there's also a extreme economic cost to this, where one, it just off-puts a lot of Indians because they hear the kill Modi, kill India, balkanize India. That's not a great advertisement for, Canada-India trade. And also, if these people and their drug money and all that have a hand in the Canadian system, then it really is going to reduce our trust with countries that want to trade with us, because you don't want to do trade. You want to do trade with a Western nation like Canada, okay? It's a great place with great people and all that, but you don't. There's a reason why more people want to trade with Canada than they do with Pakistan, because you can't trust a Pakistani shipping company to be in any way honest, or what links do they have, and that's the same thing we're running in here with Canada. So I hope it gets sorted out. Again, I don't see like a trade deal coming this week at the G7, but there could be some good talks. I hope there's a good step taken. I hope a second step is taken. I hope there's more cooperation, and we could figure out how to get along with an allied democracy that used to be part of the British Empire, just like us. It's not rocket science.
Daniel, this brings me to the last question. Do you think in the new regime the relevance of Khalistanis have gone down?
Yes. I think they have gone down. They're inside the cabinet proper. There's one Secretary of State or something, a new position, which isn't quite cabinet. He's a Khalistani, but there are no hardcore Khalistanis inside the ministers. There are no hardcore Khalistani ministers, which was the big problem with the Liberals under Trudeau. Is some of the top ministers were hardcore Khalistanis, then you add in Jagmeet. So without any, they don't really have any control of any federal ministries right now. So yes, the influence has to go down, and I think it has gone down. I think you've seen the Khalistanis start to lash out a little bit at their loss of power, and I think they made some pretty bad political gambles in the last few years that have left them in a much worse situation than they were in when the whole Niger fiasco started.
India-Canada relationship going forward from here, after the G7, what could be the immediate future, if you were to ask?
I think the immediate future, like best case scenario for Canada, like a realistic best case scenario, is it goes well. There's some bilateral talks, and then in a month or two, there's more open bilateral talks, and we're talking more about cooperation, and we're sending delegations to each other. And listen, anything in geopolitics, when there's two reasonable countries, can be solved with an ambiguous statement at the UN, where we can all say, human rights is good, we're going to breathe air and exhale carbon dioxide, and Canada agreed to too, and we all respect each other's sovereignty because blah, blah, blah is important.